All right, what is up, folks? Welcome back to another episode of the Help Me Understand podcast. I'm your host, Coach JK McLeod, and we are kicking off another Tuesday fitness and nutrition adjacent, fitness focused episode of the Help Me Understand podcast. It's what we do here on Tuesdays. I like to take topics that are fitness and nutrition related that can be very easily overcomplicated and do my best at the time that I can bring you to uncomplicate that topic and give it to you in a way that is approachable, digestible, and most importantly, hopefully impactful in a way that you would then want to take the information or the perspective, whichever one you want to frame it as, that I've given you on that particular topic, and then truly go take some action and start working on a solution that works for you as an individual. Before getting into today's topic, where we're going to be talking about sleep debt, which I think is a very underrated thing in the world of fitness, and I'll tell you my own personal experience why that particular topic is so important to me and pivotal in my own fitness journey. First, as always, I want to take a moment to say thank you for choosing to press play on the Help Me Understand podcast. I know that you have plenty of other podcast content that you consume. And I truly, truly never take it for granted that you chose to press play and include the Help Me Understand podcast, hopefully in your weekly listening queue. If you have not done so already, I would sincerely appreciate it. Also, if you would subscribe, follow the show on whatever platform you have available to you. I truly, truly appreciate it. All right, so let's go ahead and get into today's topic. And as I mentioned right off the top, I'm going to be talking to you about sleep debt. And most recently, this came up in a conversation that I was having with a personal training client. And as we're getting primed for the workout, we were having a conversation around how sleep and recovery have been going overall for that particular person. This is somebody that I see about once a week. And over the past few sessions, one of the things that they had mentioned is that their sleep had been off. And we identified off for that particular individual as operating with about an hour to 2 hours less of the sleep that they normally have. So I think that's one thing just to point out is when somebody says to me, my sleep is off, somebody says my diet is off track, somebody says my workouts have been inconsistent, the first thing typically that I'm going to ask is for them to, in some way, shape, or form, help me understand when you say it's off, what are signs for you that that's off? What are signs for you that you are lacking consistency? So I'm typically always going to ask for some sort of a clarification when the time frame allows me to do that. So this one's, again, just really front of mind because it's part of a recent conversation, and it's also very near and dear to my heart, and I'll let you know why. So first, I just want to lay the foundation that I believe that sleep debt is something that truly matters because it's extremely important as one of the most foundational and basic things that needs to be a part of your overall fitness and or health routine, rhythm, regimen, however you want to frame it. And I think that very often it can be one of the things that gets overlooked. And I was someone who definitely thought that I could get the progress that I wanted. I could make the changes that I wanted to make without really ever focusing on sleep. And I'll share with you a little bit in just a minute on that. However, first, let me just start off with kind of breaking down a very basic definition of what I'm going to share with you with what sleep debt actually is. So I'm going to keep it like super, super simple for the sake of simplicity, because sometimes I like to keep things simple. So I would generally just define sleep debt as the gap between how much sleep your body needs versus how much you're actually getting. So an example would be if your body operates best at 8 hours on average of nightly sleep, however, you're currently averaging around 6, then you at that point have accumulated about 2 hours of sleep debt. Okay, so again, I'm all about, when it comes to fitness and health related topics, trying to simplify them. That is in no way, shape, or form meant to have you think that there aren't a lot of variables, that there aren't a lot of moving parts, that it's not something that's very complex. My hope with trying to simplify things is to make the action more approachable. So I think that the more and more that we can take very complex topics and try to simplify them, then from my own experience and also so my own individual experience and also experience working with clients over about the past decade or so, typically if we can lowering the barrier of entry doesn't sound like that doesn't feel good to me from a verbiage standpoint. If we can essentially kind of clean some things up at the beginning or clear a little bit of a path, then I think I've found that we have a better chance of getting you to take at least that first step. And then as we're continuing to go down that path, we try to untangle things there. So again, just to keep it super simple, sleep debt, we'll just call that basically that difference or that gap between how much sleep you've realized that your body needs and how much sleep your body is actually getting. And again, very simple example. You've realized that, you know what, about 8 hours a night, like I'm in a pretty good place there. But once I'm averaging about 6, then I realize I'm sitting at about 2 hours of sleep debt. And this is definitely something that can vary for person to person. I would say that a general rule of thumb for most healthy adults that the target is around about 7+ hours of sleep per night. And there's various studies that will go in a lot of different directions, and I feel pretty comfortable identifying 7 hours being about the floor that most adults should be shooting for, and then of course going up from there. So then let's talk about, and I'm going to use some analogies here, or use some verbiage that really plays off of this debt thing. So let's talk about the cost of carrying sleep debt. So when it comes down to just the basics, the fundamental role of sleep is not just something that's focused on resting. It is when you actually are giving your body and your brain the opportunity to recover. So sleep supports things like tissue repair, immune health, hormone balance, your brain function, and just your overall cognitive performance. So when you start to incur more and more sleep debt over time, and that becomes something that's chronic, so not something that's acute. So I'm not talking about something where it is 1 week out of months and months, you just had a really bad week of sleep. I'm talking when you're talking like chronic sleep debt. So you're chronically under sleeping, under recovering, then over time, that is definitely something that can start to impair your mental clarity, your focus, just your overall reaction time. And it's definitely not ideal for your workouts, your training, or just even your day-to-day productivity, whether it be at work, whether it be at home, whether it be anywhere in between those two places, whether you are a parent or not, whether you are employed or not, you still have to function as a human being. And incurring chronic sleep debt is overall, it is something that will seep into just about every aspect of your life. That's the aspects that I was talking about it from also didn't even mention some of the long-term health risks that you can really face. Chronically undersleeping is something that can significantly raise your risk for metabolic problems. It's certainly something that leads to different decision making that can then lead to weight gain. You tend to potentially start seeping into, sorry about that, I got an alarm. We tend to seep into affecting our immune system function. You can have an increase of heart disease, and the list really just kind of goes on and on. So sometimes when you are just really chronically sleep restricted, you may not necessarily feel like you're super tired. And this is so relatable to me early on in my journey. You might not feel like you're really all that tired, but your both physical and mental performance will still be degraded. You will not be operating, likely not be operating. I'm not going to say absolute. So just say for myself and most of the folks that I've come into contact with over a decade of doing this, you are going to notice that your performance, or you will have your performance be somewhat degraded. Now, why this particular topic, I've mentioned, kind of teased that this hits home for me. Why this one hits home for me is because when I first decided to take ownership over my fitness and health back in 2009, 2010, so we're talking about 15, we'll call that about 15 years ago at this point, the scenario that I was looking at was someone who who understood that I could do better at taking care of myself. At that time, our daughter was about, let's see, she was born in '06. So she was, let's say she was about 4-ish years old at that particular time. So I'm a parent of a young child. And at that point, my wife and I had gotten married a couple of years before that. So married, parent, working full time, and then also was working a part-time job too. And in a previous episode, quite a while back, I had talked about kind of my origin story and things like that, and how actually getting let go from that full-time job in 2010 really sparked my consistency with being in the gym as I was going through the job search. There's a previous episode, can't remember the episode number. If you can't find it, hit me up and I'll let you know. And so at that time, when I first decided to take control of my fitness and health, I looked at starting with exercise. So my 3 foundational fitness habits are eat well, sleep enough, and exercise regularly. And these are things that were operating that I didn't realize I was really focused on in that very succinct, like organized way of being able to just roll off the tongue, eat well, sleep enough, exercise regularly. However, behind the scenes, those have been the tenets that I've been trying to work, that have been working on. I've been working on for a number of years at this point. However, I started with exercise specifically and nothing else. So I first started by getting into a consistent routine of going to the gym. And I'm talking about an evolution over, let's say, about 5 years, because I started in 2010. And I would say that really started where I really felt like I had put all the pieces together, I'd say was around like 2014, actually. So around 2014 or so. And then I became a personal trainer in 2015. So let's say about between 4 to 5 years, this is a whole evolution. So I want to make that clear, because sometimes I think when folks are listening to folks like myself or other coaches talk about their journey and their evolution, they're thinking that it was just, okay, within a year or within 2 years. Nah, I was like super focused on just the training aspect of things. Like I was making improvements in sleep and exercise, but really training, I went all in on that first. I realize I'm kind of going off topic, but I'll bring it back in just a minute. So I first started off with exercise. And one of the main reasons I started with exercise is because I was telling myself a story that I was not going to be able to do anything to fix my sleep anytime soon. And this was back in 2010. For context, I was working full-time as a store manager in retail in the St. Louis area. So I would be working anywhere from 8 to 10 hours a day at a store in the mall. So sometimes I would be at work, let's say as early as maybe 8 a.m. Wasn't really doing like the super early 5 a.m. stuff at that point, but maybe sometimes as early as 8-ish in the morning. And then if I was closing things down, then I could be at work as late as 10 or 11 p.m. at night. And then on some of the days, I think about 2 days a week, where I was either out of work by 5 or 6 p.m. or I was off for the day, I would be working 2 nights a week at a bar as a door guy. And I would go in there, I think around 7 or 8 p.m. and then get out of there around 3, let's say around 3 o'clock in the morning. So I had decided to not focus on sleep, because I was like, my sleep is what it is. Like trying to focus on sleep is completely pointless at this point, because that's not something that's really going to improve. However, I know that I can make improvements with my physical activity and my fitness. So I started with exercise. Then as I started to understand a bit more about exercise some months later, that's when I started to make some changes with my nutrition. And then I would say it wasn't until, gosh, it probably wasn't until like 2012, maybe 13, that I even bothered to even scratch the surface of what improvements should I make with my sleep. So if you are somebody who is listening to this episode, where I will get back to the topic, but if you're somebody who's listening to this episode who is like, yeah, I don't know, like sleep that, like I hear you, but I have like shift work. I've got really young kids at home and their sleep patterns are sporadic. And I have, or I'm a single parent with kids at home. Or maybe you're not a single parent, but your partner is just really unreliable with being a partner. That's for a different different podcast episode for a different expert. I'm not the expert of that. Then if you're feeling like, man, there's no point in me really listening to a whole lot of this because the debt is just piling up and I'm just going to be forever in debt. I want you to hang tight because that is truly the story that I told myself for a number of years. And I will tell you, even today, my sleep average is not at 7 hours. Like, I'm not going to pretend at all. I keep a lot of some of the same sorts of like scheduling habits and things like that I did before. And also, I have still drastically improved my sleep quality from what it had been over a number of years. So, all right, let's get back to the topic here. Thanks for sticking with me if you stuck around this long. So, when it comes to the sleep debt piece, the common question that comes up, and this is what I was talking to my client about this morning, is the whole thing of like, well, can I just try to catch up on my sleep? So common thing would be a Monday. So basically like Sunday night through Thursday night, I typically will get, let's say, like my sleep is disrupted. So maybe I'm getting 5 to 6 hours of sleep. And then what I do is on the weekends, can I just sleep like 10 hours on the weekends? I just try to catch up. And this one can be fairly controversial. So I'll just share my point of view with you on what helps and what doesn't when when we pose this, like, can I just catch up on my sleep question? Like literally you're looking at it like, okay, Monday, I was short 2 hours. Tuesday, I was short 2 hours. And then Wednesday, I was short 1 hour. And then Thursday, I was short another hour. So I didn't keep track of what I just said, but let's say that that's about like 8 hours. So you're like, all right, Friday night, I'm going to sleep in till, whatever time on Saturday morning. So I'm going to catch up on 4 hours there. And then from Saturday night, even though I'm kind of going out, I'll make sure I get to bed at least before midnight, and then I'm just going to sleep until noon. So I'll catch up on another few hours there, and then I'm totally caught up. And let's break that down. So the reality of doing the catch up, where you do the occasional catch up on your sleep, like sleeping in or taking a nap, it can help recover some of the rest that you've lost. So it certainly is something that can have you feeling a bit refreshed immediately, but catching up isn't perfect. That is not the perfect solution. And that is essentially like the fitness version of robbing Peter to pay Paul. Eventually, like somebody's going to need like all of their money back. So in some cases, like a single night of extra sleep will really only do so much. And there's actually been some studies that suggest it could take days to repay even a modest amount of the sleep debt. So just again, if you're playing the game of, well, I just sleep in for 5, 6, 7, 8 additional hours, whatever the case may be, you may periodically, or you may initially feel like, okay, I'm rested, I'm caught up, and I'm good to go. However, continuing to play that game can be like a really, really risky one to play. Another caveat that I want to bring to you is that really relying heavily on this irregular sleep pattern where you do like weekend catch up. There's sporadic days where you just take super long naps based on like an erratic schedule. It can really start to disrupt your internal clock, which essentially may then end up affecting your regular sleep overall. So being able to do something that at least is more predictable and gets you into an understandable rhythm for your body, for many folks, in many cases, would be better than trying to do consistent, okay, not from time to time, but consistent big like catch up sessions. So for my folks who are really, really dialed into fitness, I want to share with you the perspective that your really inconsistent sleep patterns can, at the end of the day, really start to undermine your recovery, your muscle repair, your metabolic regulation. Basically, it would really start to undo some of the benefits that you are currently likely chasing with your training and your nutrition. Now, with all that being said, let me try and be at least somewhat encouraging and drop a few things that I think would be some practical ways to work on trying to get out of sleep debt. I feel like I just had a moment there where I feel like I'm one of those folks who's talking about like credit repair and it's trying to do like sleep repair. So let me give you some what I will frame as just some actionable things that you potentially can take action on. So if you're in a position to jot down some notes, or you can screenshot the timestamp on this, whatever the case may be, where you can come back to this, this is where we take the, again, very complex topic and often overcomplicated topic, and we try and identify, okay, what are some simple ways that we can just get a start on this? And I will tell you that I have implemented at some point over the past 15 years, I have implemented one or many of these particular things in order to improve my sleep from where it had been. So I will just tell you that. And if you were listening earlier, this is a reminder. I am not currently averaging 7 hours of sleep. And also, I have found that my sleep overall has massively improved. Now, the past few weeks, not so much, because I'm still working through like wisdom tooth. I had pain and then the surgery and then all that stuff. So I'm just a week out from that, literally as of yesterday. So sleep is a bit affected there, but we're getting there. All right. So in no particular order, first thing would be to prioritize a regular sleep schedule. So take a look at take a look at implementing a consistent bedtime and wake up time. Yes, even on the weekend, because that'll help regulate your body's internal clock. So if you're someone who, like 2010 JK, immediately thought to yourself, well, that's not possible, because some days I need to be at work at 8 a.m. Some days I need to be at work not until 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Some days I'm not going to be able to go to bed until 3 o'clock in the morning. Some days I can get in bed at 8 p.m. I understand that. And also, for a very small portion of the population, is that an every single day occurrence where you literally don't know what time you can get up and you don't know what time you're going to get into bed. More often than not, most of the folks that I've been able to interact with, including probably people that are listening here, have a handful of days where there is some predictability. I'm not saying all days, but there are some days where there is some predictability. And a good place to start is on those particular days. All right, so prioritizing your regular sleep schedule. Second one, focus on building a nightly routine and focusing on your sleep hygiene. So things like dimming your lights before bed, focusing on getting screens off, like disconnecting from screens anywhere from 30 minutes, even up to an hour at least, before sleep. Keep a strict boundary of your bed is basically for sleep and sex, and not work, not scrolling on your phone. This was one that I actually focused on for a certain period of time. I had a rule that if I was scrolling, then I needed to be moving. So even as I'm sitting here, like at my desk, if I was in between calls, or if I just was taking a break, because I do the Pomodoro timer method with a lot of my work sessions here at the desk. If I was taking a break in between work sessions, I would just still be sitting and just kind of scroll on my phone. And for a while, I'm not saying I do this all the time now, for a while, I just put a rule in place. Like if my thumb was just scrolling, and what didn't have to do was specifically doing something that was for business or productive or returning a message or whatever, then I needed to be moving my feet, just to really try and understand like how often that habit was happening. So building some sort of a routine where you're not scrolling in bed, Again, just keeping it for sleep and sex, like keep it simple. All right. Third one, daytime habits definitely matter. So focusing on things like trying to get natural light during the day, getting in exercise. I generally, if you have the option to protect not doing a bunch of strenuous exercise, like super high intensity exercise right before bed, then I tend to recommend like trying to protect that particular area. And also I work with individuals where that is literally the only time that they can for sure uninterrupted train, then that's what we do. It's just if you have the option, try to move workouts a bit earlier, like not necessarily bedtime. Maybe it's after work, like you work until 5 o'clock, you go work out, like that sort of a thing, but you're not getting bed till 9. Okay, gotcha. But something like an 8 p.m. workout, and then you're going to hop into bed. I would potentially look at seeing what other options you have available. And then also a big one, limiting your caffeine intake that that is seeping later and later into the day. A really good friend of mine has really been working on that particular one. I believe they listen to the podcast. So if you're listening, shout out to you for working on that, with first trying to set a bit of an earlier cutoff time for caffeine. Again, this is one that I really focused on myself for a while. I think I put like 1 p.m. in as the last time that I would consume any caffeine. For me, it was more like the energy drinks, like the raw energy drinks or an Alani or something like that. I'm not really much on coffee, like at all. And I know there's some people in shock and horror right now. It's just not my thing. When it was my thing, it wasn't even real coffee. It was like the caramel macchiato stuff from Starbucks. So I say all that just to say, even if you are someone who is looking at, I just have a sporadic schedule, sleep is really hard to come by, take a look at the daytime habits that potentially are just exacerbating that particular problem. And this was a big one, like a really big one for me, to shift my mindset from there's no point in working on my sleep because of A, B, C, D through K, and going, well, if I were to improve my sleep, what is one thing that I could do? And caffeine was one of those things. So I, for quite a while, started moving that to earlier in the day. And that's something that generally has stuck for the most part for me, unless I know I'm going to have a later night. All right, last couple of things. If needed, try to sneak in a short nap, like about 20 minutes early in the afternoon, so that it doesn't necessarily mess up your nighttime sleep. So that quick little, what we call the cat nap, try to sneak those in where possible. All right. And then the last one is just really focusing on being mindful. So what did I have? 5 tips here. Yeah. So last one, number 5, would be being mindful, being able to truly recover and pay back, let's say, or at least like work back to somewhat normalcy and a rhythm with that sleep debt. It takes time. It's not a 2 hours down, so I just sleep 2 hours more and then good to go and call it a day. Our body is very complex. Our system is very complex. There's a lot of different moving parts. So that's something to definitely keep in mind, because even if you were somebody who, okay, well, I was 4 hours in sleep debt over Monday, Tuesday, so I made up those 4 hours on Wednesday, Thursday. That doesn't take into account any of your activity. It doesn't take into account any of your nutrition. It doesn't take into account any of your stress, any of those things. So definitely be mindful and remind yourself that it takes time. If you've been undersleeping for a while, don't expect that just one weekend automatically fixes everything. You need to kind of gradually nudge your sleep back on track. Give yourself consistent, decent nights for several days or even weeks at a time. Last few things I've got here, and then we will wrap up today's episode. I really want you to get an understanding, of course, because I'm the training guy. So look at sleep debt as part of your training load. So I really want you to look at sleep debt like training stress. So just as accumulating way too much volume and intensity without recovery can lead to overtraining, accumulating sleep debt really puts a strain on your ability to recover. Think about it like you borrowed money from somebody and you're late on paying it back. Even though you eventually pay it back, you have likely put a strain on that relationship. So there's some repair that likely will need to be done there. So just keep that in mind. Think about sleep debt very much the same way as you do about overtraining and under recovering. I really want you to think, so I really want you to think about, if I were to treat my sleep like a training variable, am I giving myself enough recovery of an investment every single night? So something that you could potentially do here, if you would like to take action, is keep a very, very basic sleep log for a week, preferably on a piece of paper. All right. Because if we're talking about maybe not doing as many things on our phone, then let's pull out a piece of paper, an index card, a post-it note, whatever it might be. Keep that by the bed. Keep a simple sleep log for the week. So you would record the number of hours you slept, how you felt the next day, your energy and your performance. And that will put you on the road to making that concept of sleep debt a bit more concrete. So I'm going to leave you with a challenge here. So the challenge is for the next 7 days, and this does not have to be on a Sunday, it doesn't have to be on a Monday. And in fact, you can start tonight. If you're listening to this episode during the day, you can start tonight and commit to as consistent of a wake up time as you can. Yes, even on the weekends. So if you're immediately like, well, can't do that, how close can you get? Can you keep it within 1 hour, generally, even on the weekend, and try to get at least 7 hours per night? So 7 hours or more. Then see how you feel. What's your energy like? What's your mood? How's your workout performance been? What is your focus? And then take a look at some small wins. So what are some small wins that helped you improve that sleep each night? Or small wins that you just did the thing, whether your sleep improved or not. So shifting your bedtime anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes earlier than it had been, starting to dim your lights maybe an hour or so before bed, essentially, maybe even cutting caffeine after like 2 p.m. Maybe there's a win for you there too. So take note of some different wins along the way. All right. So with that, let's go ahead and call this an episode. So if you've listened this long, I sincerely appreciate it, especially as I kind of decided to reminisce on my starting point with my own fitness journey and my relationship with sleep. If I were to frame it best, it would be back when Facebook used to do relationship status. It wouldn't quite just be it's complicated. It would be it's improving, it's pretty good, and we've worked through some complications. That would be my relationship status with sleep. All right. So let's go ahead and call it an episode. If you have listened to the song again, thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Help Me Understand podcast. I truly, truly appreciate it. Take care of yourself. Reach out if you have questions, comments, feedback, all that good stuff. Hit me up on Instagram at Coach JK McLeod. You can email me jk@jkmcleod.com. That's MCLEOD. All right. Take care. Talk to you next time. Peace out.